Okay, so picture this. A 90-year-old great-grandmother, beaming, walks across a graduation stage, not watching a loved one, but receiving her own diploma.
Wow.
That's the incredible true story of Annette Roberts, who recently graduated from Southern New Hampshire University.
And while it's a fantastic, heartwarming story, just on the surface, when you dive into the material about Annette's journey,
Hmm.
it reveals it's actually so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a powerful prompt for all of us, really, to challenge some, deeply held beliefs we might carry about learning, pursuing dreams, and whether there's ever really an age limit on either.
Exactly. Stories like Annette's, they make headlines, right? And
Yeah.
maybe we think, wow, good for her. But then do we stop and ask ourselves, why am I holding back?
Right. Why did I stop pursuing that thing I wanted to learn or achieve?
Uh-huh. So our mission today is to really dig into the insights hidden within the articles and research shared about Annette and, well, the whole topic of learning later in life.
Hmm.
What can we actually take away?
Well, at the heart of this, as the material lays out pretty clearly, is this tension. It's created by society's, I guess, obsession with early
Oh,
success.
yeah. You see it everywhere.
We're just bombarded with images of people hitting massive fame or fortune in their 20s. And it sort of creates this unconscious feeling that if you haven't made it by a certain age, you've somehow missed your window.
Like the door's closed.
Exactly. It can make you believe learning something significant or chasing a big goal actually has an expiration date.
Which, when you stop and think about it, is a wild idea.
Not
So,
you.
okay, let's unpack Annette's story first. 90 years old, a great-grandmother, finally getting her degree from SNHU.
Hmm.
We learn she originally paused her education decades ago,
Hmm.
like way back. Had to focus on raising 5 children.
A lifelong dream put on hold, but definitely not forgotten.
That's the key bit, isn't it? Not forgotten.
Absolutely. And her accomplishment becomes this beautiful symbol. Yeah. The material calls her a beacon of hope, specifically because she just flies in the face of that intense cultural focus on, young success.
It forces us to confront that question, doesn't it? Are we letting the fear of being too late stop us from even starting something?
Yeah. It puts that whole idea of youthful glory, maybe that quick burst of fame, against the quiet power of lifelong dedication to a dream.
It definitely makes you reconsider which path holds maybe deeper value in the long run.
Absolutely. And this brings us right to dismantling that whole too late myth. The information points out that modern society, with its constant spotlight on early achievers,
Yeah.
those under 30 lists,
Those lists, yeah.
they really do create this damaging illusion that the golden years for achievement are like limited just to your youth.
It can feel like a race against the clock, can it? Like you have to
Mm.
sprint to some finish line by 30 or 35, and if you don't, well, tough luck.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
But Annette's story and the broader picture painted by the material we looked at provides such powerful evidence against that.
Mm.
Some dreams, some kinds of success, they just need more time.
They need to simmer.
Sort of. They can absolutely bloom later in life. The examples shared include people finding completely new passions, building whole successful lives around them in their 30s, 40s, even later. There's just no universal timeline you have to stick to.
But okay, let's be real for a second. The common wisdom, and maybe even our own personal fears, tell us that learning does get harder as you age. Memory slips, maybe energy isn't quite what it was. Surely there are some genuine disadvantages.
That is absolutely the common perception, no doubt. But this is where the research highlighted in the material gets really interesting, actually kind of surprising.
Okay.
It turns out older learners possess some pretty unique advantages.
Okay, now I'm leaning in. Like, what kind of advantages?
Well, motivation, for one. Studies suggest that older learners often have a significantly stronger, more deeply rooted motivation.
Stronger, how so?
Well, think about it. When you're young, a lot of learning might be driven by external pressures, getting good grades, passing exams, landing a specific job.
Right, ticking boxes.
Exactly. But later in life, the material suggests the motivation shifts. It becomes far more intrinsic, driven by a genuine desire to enhance a skill or explore a passion, or just for the sheer joy of understanding something new.
Yeah.
That internal pull, research by folks like Yenny and Jenkins shows, is incredibly powerful.
So it's less about proving something externally and more about like internal curiosity and purpose. That makes total sense. What about how we learn, though? Does age impact that?
It changes it, yeah, but oft for the better. Older learners, just because they have decades of life experience, including navigating setbacks, challenges,
Stuff happens.
right, they tend to develop better learning strategies. They're often more effective at figuring out how to approach new material and, importantly, how to persist when it gets tough.
Resilience.
And crucially, they're also much better at integrating new knowledge with everything they already know. They don't just add facts like stacking blocks, they weave them into their existing understanding of the world. That leads to a much deeper, more nuanced grasp of the subject.
It's like building a richer, more complex mental web, maybe, rather than just a list of facts.
Precisely. And surprisingly, some fascinating studies mentioned, like one by Pierce back in 2017, even found that older students can academically outperform their younger peers.
Really, outperform.
Yeah.
That flies directly in the face of the memory stereotype. Why is that?
Well, the research seems to point largely to those skills we just mentioned. Superior time management, for one, and that ability to integrate new knowledge really effectively.
Okay.
Plus, there's the factor of self-direction. The material highlights research from Liao and colleagues indicating older learners are typically more self-directed. They're just better at identifying what they need to learn, planning how they'll study, actually executing that plan efficiently, and, crucially, accurately assessing their own progress along the way.
Those sound like skills that life just teaches you over time. So it's less like aging diminishes your ability to learn and more like it enhances your approach to learning, refining motivation and strategies.
Exactly. It shifts the landscape. And speaking of shifts, the material also brings in a different perspective on this, maybe an ancient one. Stoicism.
Ah, the Stoics, okay.
From a Stoic point of view, aging itself is just part of the natural order. It's something we can't control. Epictetus taught us, accept what's outside our control.
Right, don't fight the inevitable.
And focus intensely on what is within our power.
We can't stop the years from passing, no, but we can choose what we do with them.
Precisely that. We can control our choices and our approach. So instead of lamenting getting older or worrying about being too old, the Stoic angle prompts you to ask, okay, what can I learn or do right now, today? How can I use this moment to improve myself?
Annette's story is kind of a perfect Stoic example then, isn't it?
Totally. She didn't let an uncontrollable factor like her age dictate her life. She focused on the controllable choice, pursuing her dream, taking action regardless of the years.
That really shifts the power back to the individual, away from some external clock and onto our internal will. And talking about internal focus, the material makes a really strong case that the true value of learning is actually in the journey itself, not just hitting some finish line or getting a quick result.
Yeah, we live in such a results-oriented, instant gratification culture, don't we?
Definitely.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking learning is only valuable if it gets you, I don't know, a promotion next month or makes you famous by 25. But if everything has to be achieved super young, what happens for the rest of your life?
Good point.
Learning is fundamentally a marathon, not a 100-meter dash.
And hopefully a marathon you can actually enjoy running.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you adopt that longer-term view, the emphasis shifts. It moves away from just the distant outcome and onto the small daily steps. Learning a new skill, understanding a complex topic, it's all built piece by piece, day by day. The joy comes not just from the final achievement, whatever that is, but from the actual process of growth itself, moment by moment. The material even quotes Socrates here, saying he enjoyed seeing himself become better each day, just like someone enjoys improving their land or their horses.
That daily self-improvement, that internal feeling of growth,
Yeah.
that's the real reward. It's not just about the certificate on the wall eventually. It's about the person you're becoming along the way.
Beautifully put. And this brings us to another really powerful concept from the material, the compound effect of learning.
Ah, like compound interest in investing, that kind of idea.
Precisely that analogy.
Yeah.
Learning is an investment in yourself. And the longer you commit to it, even with just small, consistent effort, the greater the compound effect over time.
So learning just a little bit each day, practicing for 15 minutes, it seems tiny in the short term.
Right. Almost insignificant sometimes.
But over months and years, it accumulates into something potentially huge. Astonishing progress.
Annette's story is the perfect illustration of this, but on a grand scale, right? The seeds of interest and knowledge she planted decades ago, maybe just nurturing a quiet dream back then, eventually compounded into her walking across that graduation stage at 90. Every little bit you learn today, every new connection your brain makes, it builds strength and capability for your future self.
That's a motivating thought.
And what drives those daily efforts often changes as we age, too. As the material points out, while younger learners might be primarily driven by those external goals, exams, jobs, expectations.
Right.
Later in life, the motivation frequently shifts inward. It becomes more about genuine curiosity, personal growth, exploring things that truly fascinate you personally.
So maybe less pressure, more presence in the learning itself.
That's a great way to put it. The research suggests older learners often feel less pressure to perform against external standards. Because of that, they can often appreciate the internal value of learning more deeply.
It stops being about proving something to others.
Exactly. And becomes more about shaping yourself, becoming, as the material puts it, a better self. This phase of life, driven by internal interest, is described as maybe an ideal time for cultivating virtues and pursuing knowledge purely for its own sake.
So when we pull back and look at Annette Roberts' incredible achievement and filter it through all this research on adult learning, the wisdom of Stoicism, the value of the process, this compound effect, and the shift to internal motivation,
Oh.
well, the core message couldn't really be clearer, could it?
Not at all. Age is truly not the barrier we often perceive it to be. Not when it comes to pursuing dreams or committing to learning. I mean, if someone can achieve a major goal like graduating college at 90,
Yeah.
it absolutely dismantles any excuse we might have based on feeling too old.
Southern New Hampshire University themselves, they summed it up perfectly. Their statement was just, it's never too late to learn. Simple as that.
And Annette Roberts, she offered perhaps the most powerful encouragement directly. She urged people basically, if you have a dream, don't just leave it there. Do something about it. She encouraged boldness, sharing your goals, and really believing that they can be achieved, regardless of the number of years that have passed.
So maybe let's leave you, the listener, with the question the material prompts us all to ask ourselves. If age wasn't even a factor, wasn't a consideration at all, what would you truly love to learn or pursue?
Yeah, try letting go of those age anxieties just for a moment. Cherish the time you have